The Peter Principle states that workers get promoted to a level of incompetence. If you think about it, it makes sense. You get promoted for things that you're good at into doing things that you've never done before. This kind of slightly cynical, maybe a bit Dilbert-esque view of management hierarchy, when it first came out in a book by Lawrence Peter in 1969, sparked a wide array of solutions to what people saw initially as a structural problem. And these days we know that the solution is actually really simple. It's called training. And the truth is there are a lot of different approaches to training leaders. Some of them are okay, some of them are rubbish, some of them work. In my experience, there's been one common thread that's helped to make me successful. And so in my career, I went from being an engineer in my 20s to managing teams of engineers and engineering departments, IT departments. In my 30s, I went from managing the IT department to managing multiple departments as a senior executive. And these days, I've coached literally hundreds of executives in how to be more effective and support well-being and promote positive team culture. Throughout all of this, there's been a kind of secret weapon. And it's allowed me to go from being an individual contributor to being a manager to being a leader to supporting other leaders. And it's helped me to rapidly overcome incompetence, let's call it that, at every step of the way. The name is a little misleading. It's called Getting Things Done, or GTD, by David Allen. And it's about so much more than just getting things done. So in this video, I want to explain 3 essential components of this methodology, and I'll throw in a bonus one as well, that absolutely, time and again, been proven, in my experience, to take promising leaders and turn them into successful ones. As a leader, you need a few key things. First of all, you need capacity. You need to be able to take on the new role. You also need to shift your mindset from doing into supporting, and supporting success and the success of others. And to do that, you need structure and process. Now, this is essential. The energy that you used to direct into getting it done, the diligence, the conscientiousness that got you here, needs to be rerouted into diligence and conscientiousness about supporting your whole team in succeeding. You also need to be able to lead by example. And this is probably the biggest place where leaders get branded as incompetent, is when they themselves are so swamped and overwhelmed and unavailable that they're no longer able to execute on their duties as a leader. So in order to create that structure of support, a big part of it is creating accountability. And a big part of creating accountability is keeping track, and keeping track specifically of who said they'd do what by when. Keeping track of things in your brain is a terrible idea. It just doesn't work. If you're a waiter, it's kind of impressive. For everyone else, especially those of you that now have 6 or a dozen direct reports, you need external systems. And that's what getting things done is all about. It's about externalizing and creating systems for those things that you need to track in order to be an effective leader, so that you can use your brain for other things. Now, people often wonder how to have effective meetings, and one of the biggest aspects of effective meetings, which I've facilitated a lot of them, is actionability. That decisions get made and that actions and follow-up happen as a result of that meeting having happened. Otherwise, most of the time, it's just a nice chat. So, when you're in meetings and when you're a leader, what do you need to be taking notes on? Well, what happened in the meeting, sure, and that might keep you engaged because you're writing. But one of the most fundamental things to listen out for is who said they do what. What are the accountabilities? And writing these down will allow you to then take them later and put them into a special kind of list, a list in the Getting Things Done methodology we call the waiting for list. And in particular, if you store it in a recommended 3-part format of who said they'd do it, when they said they'd do it, the starting point, date, and what it is they said they'd do, you're very rapidly going to have a very powerful list that allows you to know, when do I need to follow up with someone, and when can I let things ride for a bit? The worst kind of manager is one that's constantly coming around with their own anxieties about your deadlines and checking in with that underlying kind of energy of, oh dear, are you going to do it? Is it going to look bad for me if you don't? This list, the waiting for list, has helped so many managers, so many leaders to get out of that trap of anxiety about other people doing or not doing what they said they'd do, and gives you a structured, simple approach that allows you once again to redirect your conscientiousness, your caring about the right things getting done, into appropriate follow-up with those around you. There's another kind of meeting you're going to be having as a leader, and that's the one-to-one. In the one-to-one meetings, very often, people come relatively unprepared. And so once again, you're having a nice chat. And that's great. And the between the lines, feel-good stuff is important. But in addition to following up on the things that you're waiting for, which the one-to-one can be a good opportunity for you to do that, you may need to raise new topics with people. In fact, you almost always will. The worst practice is the time you remember it, you dash over to that person's desk and sort of dump on them. The best practice is to get that onto a list that we call the agenda list. And again, these aren't formal agendas. They're just sort of ad hoc agendas for those standing meetings that you have, either with a particular person or with a particular team, so that you can raise those as appropriate. And again, the purpose of doing so is to drive it towards some form of decision and action. So the agenda list is another key component, kind of part and parcel with the waiting for list, that allows you to both track what's been agreed to and to raise topics of discussion that will invariably lead to you delegating new things for your direct reports to do. All of this is shockingly simple to implement and yet powerfully effective in supporting you as a leader, but it's not enough in itself. Because in addition to managing reactively to what people have said they do and what you want to raise based on new circumstances, you also need to be managing proactively. And in order to do this, you need to be able to have the option of thinking out ahead of a situation. And to do that, you guessed it, once again, you need an external system for this. So what we call the areas of focus list in a comprehensive GTD system is a list of those major areas that are your work responsibilities. You need to have these, and all of your reports need to have these. Clear delineation about those areas that are ongoing for you to support and maintain and improve and optimize. All of those things that those kind of verbs would go into. And there's one really key area of focus, or foci, that you need to take on, and that is your people themselves. So if you had nothing more than a list of the names of your direct reports, and you review this once a week in something we call the weekly review process, you will naturally and automatically start to be thinking about how you can support your people, how you can help to further develop them, what they're working on, what they may need. It may give you an opportunity once a week to single out someone for a bit of praise. And so the areas of focus combined with a weekly reviewing process becomes hugely effective in your toolkit as a way to start to proactively support rather than just reactively support your people. Okay, so I promised you a bonus, and here it is. When I went from managing a department to managing multiple departments, I was suddenly much more out of my depth than ever. I didn't know a lot about the accounting department, for example, but I knew that certain key objectives needed to be met, certain goals needed to be met, and certain people needed to do those. The waiting for list in itself was too tactical for that. It just didn't work to manage those much larger outcomes in the way I needed to be thinking about them. So in the Getting Things Done, or GTD methodology, we think about desired outcomes, and we call those projects. It's what is the finish line state, the ultimate state, not just this person's going to get back to me with a draft of something, but we're going to implement a whole new way of stating our P&L. And those outcomes are ones that you can track in a list we call projects delegated. Here, I'm going to bring in another acronym that meshes well with GTD, RACI, R-A-C-I. The idea here is just that when you have a large project, there are people who are responsible for doing it, accountable at a high level, the executive sponsors or those for whom they have sort of ultimate decision-making authority, those that you need to consult, and those that you simply need to inform about the status of the project. So acknowledging that you often have accountability without line-level responsibility is a huge part of stepping up and becoming the kind of leader that can encompass areas that are way outside your domain of expertise, but that you can still lend valuable support to. So the project's delegated list is my bonus. It's one that not every GTD practitioner necessarily knows about, but it was essential when I moved deeply out of my comfort zone into managing multiple departments. Okay, so truth be told, most people get promoted into a position of leadership because they have some degree of natural qualities or characteristics that someone has spotted that's caused them to be able to gain the respect of their peers and is a predictor to some degree of their success. However, most leaders that are truly successful in making the transition from an individual contributor into a greater leadership role, or from one leadership role to an even bigger one, have one thing in common in my experience, and that is the mindset that what got me here won't necessarily get me there. That is, they instinctively understand the Peter Principle and understand the need to identify and overcome any areas of relative incompetence in their new role. Hopefully these 4 very simple practices, things that you can do today, even just on paper, will give you a taste of how effective it can be to implement systems and processes for yourself in order to free up capacity, in order to focus on the right things in your new role, and ultimately to be able to lead by example as someone that's highly effective, but also in balance with their life and work. If that sounds interesting, consider what a comprehensive methodology could do to give you those qualities of leadership. That's what getting things done is. It applies to every aspect of work and life. I've been practicing it myself for 20 years or more actually now, and it works. That sounds interesting. If you'd like to know more for yourself as a leader or a new leader or someone stepping up in a bigger way, or if you're responsible for training leaders, this is an incredibly effective tool. It's been used inside of big financial institutions for new managing directors and in lots of places where people recognize that, again, what got you here won't get you there. If it sounds intriguing, please do reach out to us. next-action.co.uk. Meanwhile, for more of these kinds of tips and support in up-leveling your career practice and making your life and work more enriching and satisfying, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.